The sun was shining brightly over the pool when I woke up in the lounge on board the Norwegian Cruise Line ship. The area was slowly coming to life as adults of all ages were already enjoying the day or taking a morning swim before heading out on a shore excursion. My location took me by surprise for a moment. The crew members diligently cleaned the pool itself and the surrounding area. Bartenders and helpers were restocking and preparing the two bars for another day of partying. As I watched the ship's staff work harmoniously to start a new day for so many guests, my mind flashed back to last night's unexpected disasters. What happened between me and two people I trusted, one of whom was my wife, seemed incredible and disgusting. Returning to the world of the living, I threw away my blanket and remembered everything from the very beginning. My name is Cade McDowell, and I met my wife Rose during my senior year of college. We became a couple, as many people do. We dated, fell in love, and eventually got married. We were both only children. Rose had 2 degrees in corporate finance and business administration. If it weren't for her incredible work, she would still be studying and working on her MBA. I have a master's degree in computer software architecture, and I have found 2 niches, one in the security field, where I mainly help small companies protect themselves from threats, and the other in the gaming industry. It's safe to say that after 5 years of marriage, Rose and I are ahead of our financial plans and expectations. You see, planning has always been very important to my wife and me. I used to be sure that we planned almost everything in our lives as a couple, and yesterday I would have bet that we planned everything, but now everything has changed and very much. To begin with, we planned a modest honeymoon. The wedding was small, and her parents paid for the full ship due to the large size of the family. That doesn't mean we stayed at a Motel 6, of course. 8 months before our wedding, Rose and I found a great rate on Maui. Our other plans included hard work and a smart investment plan at 5-year intervals, so we could adjust it based on the economy and our income. We agreed to start a family only after our 5th anniversary, with the caveat that we could change this schedule if necessary. We wanted to save enough to buy a dream home in which we could raise our child or children. However, in matters of planning, Rose forgot something, much to her regret. A good planner must pay full attention. This is imperative if you want to stay ahead of any troubles. In high school, I worked as a server at a large banquet and convention center in the Midwest. My boss, a plump, curly-faced guy of about 19, clearly had a grudge against me, and I knew, as I watched and planned, that he was going to do something. I didn't know what exactly, so I paid a fellow auto mechanic student to lie to my boss when he asked him to check out his new SUV, which he said had problems. The boss discovered the lie when the guys from the auto repair shop laughed and chased him out of the building. It turns out that the hypodeucinator is a non-existent device, and problems with the glove box seal cannot cause engine problems. During their shift, they got into an argument, and the student I was paying opened the window in the 3rd-floor storage room and dropped an entire glass bottle of club soda on the hood of the boss's SUV. This required repainting. The boss had an argument with the student, and both were fired. My college girlfriend before Rose threw me a surprise birthday party. But there were real problems there, maybe even more than one. I told her categorically how much I hate surprises, especially parties in my honor. I revealed her plan a week before my birthday. While she sat in the small on-campus banquet hall her fraternity helped rent, surrounded by friends, people we barely knew, alcohol and food her parents paid for, I was across the state with 3 friends at Six Flags. The next day she broke up with me, and I didn't even get any cake. I felt the same way. So yeah, I had a pretty tough personality, added to the fact that I always paid attention and was a planner. Luckily, Rose and I discussed these things before we started dating seriously or getting married. It seemed to me that she had forgotten, or even worse, she was making a show of it. Harold Wilcott was the owner, president, and CEO of GWC Worldwide, Inc. He was a powerfully built, well-dressed man, about 8 years older than us, with luxurious hair and tailored clothes. Appearance was very important to him. Harold was a financial wizard and self-taught, surprisingly modest and sincere for such an influential businessman. I perceived him as humble rather than selfish, and although Rose agreed, she assured me that he was not like that in business. I've interacted with Harold many times over the years, and we hit it off. We first met when Rose took a job at his company the year we got engaged. When we met, Harold was worth almost $1 billion, not counting his businesses and real estate. But this did not stop him from finding time to communicate with me or with other significant people at corporate events. He was pleasant to talk to and knew how to listen. GWC had a diverse range of clients, from ultra-wealthy multinational corporations to venture capital firms and investor groups seeking franchise opportunities. So, when Rose brought home a new job offer last year, I was initially leery because I wanted Rose to pursue her MBA. There was no guarantee she would stay at GWC, and I wanted her to get both the experience and the degree. Rose agreed with my reasons, and we decided that she should ask Harold for some time. A week later, Harold invited Rose to host a dinner at our house to discuss the proposal. Again, I felt a slight mistrust, fearing that he was going to present his sales speech right on our territory, although we decided to listen to him anyway. After a pleasant dinner, complete with friendly and light banter, Harold took a moment when we were all relaxed to explain that the position on offer included everything Rose could have learned at university, but at the same time she would gain real experience of working with the largest corporations, concluding the largest deals and communicating with the most influential businessmen on the planet. In addition, he was willing to pay the difference between the salary and the cost of tuition to obtain her MBA. By the time he finished explaining, I found no serious objection to her accepting the offer. The only small problem for me was that Harold was unable or unwilling to maintain a long-term relationship. In the 5.5 years we knew him, he had 6 girlfriends. This probably should have made me suspicious, but I trusted Rose and him because his aura inspired trust in others. Over the past year, as far as I knew, nothing suspicious had happened. Rose was always where she said she would be. There were standard business trips, but she always had her own room on another floor, as Harold insisted with his staff regardless of gender. The rest of the time, no questionable overtime occurred. Moreover, Harold and his current girlfriend, Claire, had dinner with us several times, and one day Rose invited them to our home for dinner and drinks. The most important thing is that I never noticed suspicious glances between them, nor Harold's malicious grins addressed to me. On our 5th wedding anniversary, Rose and I were engrossed in researching and discussing a special vacation. Most of the offers seemed too expensive. It's not that we didn't have money, but we weren't going to spend huge sums on flights and hotels. In just 5 or 6 months, Rose would be off the pills, and we saw no point in wasting our savings. Given that our special vacation might have to be postponed, we reluctantly looked for something simpler like Cancun or Las Vegas. And then, a month before our anniversary, and just a few days before we were about to book our flights and hotels, Rose returned home in high spirits. She could barely contain her delight, let alone express it clearly. Finally, after my constant requests to calm down and take a deep breath, she finally spoke out. She said that a few weeks ago, while discussing our vacation plans, she spoke with Harold, and today he invited us to join him and his current lover, Karen, on a cruise to Europe. He even offered to pay part of the expenses. The cruise lasted 15 days in Spain, Portugal, and the Canary Islands. The accommodations may not have been first class, but they were decent and the number of stops was frequent. I had many questions to which she had answers. Again, I felt suspicious, thinking this was all a bit over the top for an employee, even if she was a great personal assistant. Of course, I asked Harold to give me his number, and after dinner I called him. I noticed that Rose wanted to eavesdrop on our conversation, but wisely stepped aside. "I was expecting your call," Harold said with a warm laugh. "I'm so glad Rose has a man who never fails to impress me." I asked some of the most obvious questions. The Herald confirmed what Rose had said. "Cade," he replied reassuringly, "Karen and I were going on this trip anyway. It has been planned for a long time. I didn't know it was your anniversary, but when Rose told me about it, I thought it would be a great way to say thank you for her hard work and for being so invaluable to her, he continued, and to me, it's a happy wife, happy life rule. Okay, I admitted, starting to relax and thinking that the vacation could turn out to be wonderful. Will we be able to spend time together, or will there be work moments? There will be no work, my friend, he replied. I expect you and Rose to join me at the captain's table on your first night on board. Besides that, we can go ashore together, or if you want, we won't see each other for 15 whole days. Where's the catch? I asked, with slight excitement. There's no catch, Cade, he answered quickly. I just explained everything. Please, I want you both to enjoy your holiday, but I will be offended if you don't trust me. This seemed strange, despite his inviting chuckle, and I found it difficult to pay attention to his words. Okay, Harold, I said. Perhaps all that remains to be said is thank you. After the call, I saw that Rose was euphoric again. We spent the entire evening making lists. Her list included shopping for appropriate beach and evening wear. I had to take additional leave for 5 days from work. The next day, the surprise consisted of organizing an air flight to Spain. Harold told Rose that she should fly from Seattle, where we lived and where GWC was headquartered, to North Carolina instead of New York. He himself flew to Spain 2 days before the cruise due to a meeting in Paris, but sent his private plane to give us a lift. This further eased the financial burden. I appreciated it, but I still thought it was all a little over the top. A week later, we arrived on a warm spring evening and headed to the hotel, full of anticipation for the days ahead and hoping for a good night's sleep. Our hotel was top class, and Rose enjoyed a gourmet dinner in a 5-star restaurant. I even briefly thought about passionate intimacy with my wife that same night, but we were both too tired after the spacious jet flight. After all, we had 15 days ahead of us to enjoy each other, I thought. As we approached the ship, Harold was already waiting for us on the upper deck, smiling and complimenting Rose on her appearance and the handshake he gave me. After the warm greeting, I noticed that Harold was alone. "Where's Karen?" I asked, looking around. "Unfortunately, she couldn't come," he replied. Even though I knew Rose as her boss, I didn't get to know him very well personally. There was something insincere in his voice, but I was not ready to jump to conclusions. Karen was a model who suddenly had a lucrative, but unplanned, offer to participate in a photo shoot. At least that was the Herald's version. It sounded plausible, and once Rose and I got to our room, she agreed. "I feel sorry for him now," she said sincerely. "He helped us so much with this journey, and now he is forced to spend his vacation alone. We should probably plan some excursions for him. It's polite." My joy began to fade, and Rose noticed my change in mood. I thought, well, there's a catch here after all. Well, she consoled. That doesn't mean we won't spend every free minute enjoying each other and this wonderful vacation. Let's try to understand what Harold really wants at dinner tonight. This was the first time Rose's boss's behavior began to bother me. Did Rose know anything about Harold? Apart from being a rich man who regularly travels on jets, is he also someone who plays with the feelings of his girlfriends? The thought persisted in my mind, but I couldn't quite figure out what Rose meant. Rose and I spent the afternoon exploring the ship. As we walked from bow to stern, it seemed as if there were no children at all. This made me happy. The ship, in addition to all the family-friendly amenities, also had amusement park-style rides hanging over the edge of the deck. I made a mental note that at least Rose would be able to spend time with Harold. While she and I were together, Rose loved thrilling, risky rides, but I didn't so much. I didn't want to strain my brain, just as Rose noticed that I was observing something and made a remark. "I think I'll ask Harold if he likes roller coasters," she said cheerfully. "I'm definitely going to them." The ship was magnificent. He had 6 restaurants and a buffet at his disposal. There were 4 lounges with different decor and music styles, 3 swimming pools with bars scattered throughout, a gaming room with a casino, and an entire shopping arcade reminiscent of an open-air shopping mall. There were also play areas, mini golf, shuffleboard, basketball court, indoor and outdoor running track, and a full gym. There was even a hair salon and manicure and pedicure salons on board. I even used the hairdresser before Rose, and I headed to the main ballroom for dinner. We were both pretty nervous. It's no surprise that Harold was the star at the captain's table. Rose and I snuggled several times during table introductions. I had to wear a tuxedo many times, but I hated the tight feeling. Harold introduced us as his friends rather than as employees, which somewhat allayed my concerns. However, there were 12 seats at the table. This apparently took into account the captain, 8 couples, and the 3 of us. Additionally, there was no extra chair for Karen, and the table was set for 12 when we sat down. So the questions arose: when did Karen cancel her participation, and when did Harold inform the staff about this upon boarding? After dinner, the captain excused himself, and many of the couples got up to go to the dessert table or to dance. Harold politely waited until Rose and I had danced together a few times, and then asked me if he could dance with her. At first, I found this comforting, but it soon turned out that Harold and Rose had spent many songs together on the dance floor. What seemed like half an hour to me was probably a little less, but they managed to dance at least 4 fast and 3 slow numbers. Harold did not do anything indecent with his hands or body. It was the way they looked at each other. It seemed that for Rose I had ceased to exist. This was an alarming sign, and those around me made it clear to me that I should be on guard. It might have looked innocent, but I didn't want to take any chances. The thought of Karen, if there really was one, only increased my anxiety. They came back as if everything was completely normal. The worst thing for me was that they didn't pretend. Not one of them glanced sideways at me. "Cade," Gerald said with a smile, wiping the sweat from his face with a handkerchief. "Your wife is an amazing dancer. I don't remember having so much fun in the last many years." With that, he headed towards the bar, offering to bring me a drink after he took Rose's order. It wasn't until Rose had settled into her seat that she noticed my gloomy expression. "Darling," she asked carefully, "what happened?" I just looked at her. The silence gave her time to think. "You're not mad because we danced, are you?" she said, leaving the phrase unsaid, as befits a smart woman. "No," I answered coldly. "It was just a rather long trip, wasn't it? And the way the two of you danced was nothing like the first time." "Oh God," she said, putting her hand on my shoulder. "Please, honey, don't be jealous. Yes, we danced a few times when we went out to dinner with clients. I think you saw 2 people who know each other well. And no, not in an intimate sense. You know I've been working for this man for a long time, so of course we feel comfortable together." I didn't say anything, I just sat there, thinking about what had happened. Apart from the fact that my imagination reinforced what I saw, I was not ready to ruin our magnificent 5th anniversary over a small thing. After waiting a few moments, Rose continued. "Give me a few minutes to catch my breath, finish the drink I brought for us, and I'll help us make a decent exit, okay?" Over the next 15 minutes, she managed to do all this. Returning to our cabin, Rose immediately headed to the bathroom and turned on the shower. I'm pretty sure she could smell his cologne just like I did. I expected her to invite me to join her after a quick wash, but she had other plans. When Rose came out of the bathroom, she was wearing new underwear that I had never seen before. It looked expensive. Her hair was pulled back into a bun, exposing her entire tender neck to me. She had freshened up her lipstick, and her bare toes indicated she'd had a manicure and pedicure before her vacation. "How do you like it?" she said, making a flirtatious turn. I roared like a lion. It may have sounded like the roar of the lion from The Wizard of Oz, but who cares? If Guinness had a record for removing a tuxedo, I would break it. The same can be said about my shower ritual. All thoughts about the events of that night disappeared. There is a slight difference when you know your partner. Moreover, everything was different from what we were used to. Everything seemed to be deliberate, as if according to a plan, and there was no spontaneity. But this night something was clearly missing from her, as if she was simply completing some item on a list, and it threw me off balance. As I lay there catching my breath afterwards, I couldn't help but wonder about her intentions. The second day was magical. We spent the entire morning at our first port of call and enjoyed the afternoon with a variety of activities. On the shore, we avoided the typical tourist traps and checked out the local small shops. We had lunch at a cozy roadside cafe. Back on the ship, we went to the casino. I played blackjack while Rose sat nearby at the Buffalo slot machine. Later, we watched a comedy show before heading back to our cabin. The day went so well that night I took the initiative into my own hands. The next morning, we found ourselves in the grip of passion again. Despite my protestations the first night, I was starting to worry that we might need to go easy so we wouldn't end up completely exhausted. We trudged back to our breakfast table when Gerald walked into our row, waving as our eyes met. He walked over and put his arm around Rose and put his hand on my shoulder, pulling me into a friendly side hug. He asked if he could join, and after Rose quickly said yes, he headed to the food line. I realized that Rose was the cement in this strange company. Of course, Gerald and I knew each other, but we were completely different. We had nothing in common. It became clear to me that Rose was probably stressed out, trying to be polite despite what was supposed to be a much-anticipated vacation for us. She was apparently torn between her professional and personal life. But this did not console me at all. "Isn't it wonderful?" he asked in a cheerful tone, sitting down with a plate full of food. "Did you both enjoy the first 2 days on the ship?" Rose immediately spoke up, spouting compliments and thanking Gerald endlessly for everything he had done for us. "What are your plans for today?" he asked, looking first at her and then at me. Rose didn't answer right away, instead looking at me for a clue. "I don't know yet," I said with disbelief. I was thinking of going to the pool and relaxing. They both just looked at me. It was strange. Suddenly, with a slight mockery, I said in a woman's voice, "I need to start tanning in advance, you know." It made no impression, and I didn't add anything else. Rose slowly turned her gaze away from me and fixed it on Gerald. "I want to ride those 2 roller coasters and bungee jump." Everything became uneasy. Gerald looked at me. "Rose said it wasn't to your taste," he remarked without asking a question. "What about you, Gerald?" she asked, as if according to a pre-written script. "Do you like roller coasters?" "I love the thrill," he answered immediately. "I'm sure you already knew that. They say the hair on the back of your head can reveal a lot." Well, I listened to them while rubbing the area with both hands. Something about their conversation seemed so forced. "Could you, dear?" she asked why. I still didn't understand. It was clear that the decision had already been made. My blood was already boiling, and I didn't want to explode right there in front of everyone. "Perhaps," I said, not intending to answer, of course. "Do you want me to wait for you by the pool? I can do something else." "No," she answered. "I'll meet you by the pool. There will probably be a long line, and I think I can do 3 rides at once since you don't like them," and Gerald suggested. I wanted to point out that he wasn't actually suggesting, but he fell silent again. After breakfast, I stood up, kissed my wife on the cheek, and told her I would see her later, not them, hoping she'd get the hint when I left. About half an hour later, I dove into the pool. I chose the aft pool, which was about half full. I swam to the bar right in the water and ordered a mojito. I would have liked to try their margaritas, but apparently with Gerald cuddled up to his wife, I needed to keep my mind sharp. I was browsing on my tablet while sitting on a sun lounger, enjoying the warm sun. There were plenty of beautiful views around to distract ourselves. At one point, a stunning woman in a tiny bikini walked towards me. She was probably 10 years older than me, and she stared at me even as she walked by. "Damn, those cougars," I thought. A splash from one of the few children on the ship startled me, and I woke up with a sharp jolt. The children's mother scolded them and apologized to me. I looked at the tablet. "Damn," I said to myself. I slept for more than an hour. Then I thought, where the hell is she? Out of habit, I tried to call her. But that obviously didn't work. I decided to stay where I was, because if she wasn't there, then she was most likely already returning. After another half hour, I became furious. It was hard to believe that at least 6 hours were spent on the attractions. I left the pool and headed to the upper deck to look for her. One of the roller coasters and the bungee were there. The entrance to the second slide was 2 decks lower. Before heading down, I explored the entire upper deck, including the mini golf. Going down is not enough to say. This place was like a separate city. I've already worn quite a few of my dockers. Feeling a volcano of anger growing inside me, I never found my wife. I waited a couple laps of the rides until the cars returned from their ride. The thought occurred to me that she might have overtaken me when leaving the pool, and now she is looking for me in the same way. I returned to the pool. To no avail. I walked around the promenade and the shops. I doubted Gerald would want to go shopping with her, but who knows? Finally, I sat down next to the glass elevator that ran through the entire open space of the ship. A small replica of Big Ben showed that the local time was 3:30. Rose had been with Gerald for over 6 hours. Mad with anger, I went to an Asian fast food place and ate a bowl of ramen for a late lunch before returning to our cabin. I thought that was where she would return, although, in my opinion, this was a big if. Another half hour later, at 5:20, she burst into the cabin. "Where have you been?" she asked, looking like, what? Worried, angry, anxious. I wasn't going to relent because of her manner. Where was I? I objected in disbelief. Are you kidding? I walked and looked for you all day. If I had my iWatch, I would probably set a personal record for steps taken in 12 hours. Where the hell have you been? The words came out of my mouth. I was so angry. She looked at me, hesitated a little, and decided to change tactics. "Darling, calm down, take a deep breath," she said. This only made me angrier. "You want me to believe," I paused and took a deep breath, "that you spent all day with your boss looking for me? Did you have lunch? And maybe you have dinner with him too?" For a moment, panic flashed in her eyes. However, thanks to everything Gerald had taught me in numerous high-level meetings, the moment passed quickly and I barely caught her reaction. "Come on, dear," she objected. "He paid for almost our entire trip. He's all alone here, and I can't just ignore him. And really, we were looking for you. Well, almost all the time." I snorted. "What do you mean, almost all the time? I'm not happy about this, Rose. Maybe you're just trying to be nice. But if that's the case, you already know this vacation for us isn't going to go the way we hoped or wanted. You see, I don't like that you are forced to spend time with him just because he is alone, and if there was even a drop of reciprocity, we would not have come at all." "Darling, I promise," she tried to soften her tone. "Tonight I'm all yours, and tomorrow." Here she hesitated, looking around with anxiety. "Tomorrow," she began again, "after the little meeting we have for breakfast, it will be just you and me for the whole day. I want to go ashore and—" "What the hell do you mean, meeting?" I couldn't help myself and asked with growing anger. She literally took a few steps back, moving away from me. We have a meeting with a client after breakfast," she said, straightening her shoulders. "It was decided at the last moment, and well, since we're here together." She fell silent. I don't know if she thought I'd never understand or realized it sounded weak. I turned and walked into the bathroom, closing the door behind me. It was this door that was the only barrier protecting my wife at that moment. After splashing cold water on my face and doing breathing exercises for a few minutes, I thought about the situation and came up with a plan of action. Then I opened the door and saw her standing there. "Okay, Rose," I said as calmly as possible. "We'll play it your way. Just know that I'm not happy about this." At that moment, I decided not to express my suspicions. "I'll go out to dinner soon, and you can join me." I would like to express the threats clearly, but they were already clear. Rose had to either fix our vacation or ruin our marriage. What frightened me was that, according to my feelings, everything was equal, and it was obvious that Gerald had somehow taken possession of her mind over the past year. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been so disrespectful to me. Rose nodded in response without saying a word and went to freshen up. It was already past 6, and despite the late lunch, I felt hungry. We ate dinner in awkward silence, exchanging glances from time to time. Obviously, she had no time for words, and she did not know how to fix everything. In my imagination, this contradiction was even encouraging. If she realized what she was doing was wrong, I was sure she could fix it. But that night, there was no dancing or lounging around the ship. We eventually returned to our cabin, which seemed just as big as it had been a few days ago, but now much smaller. She sat down next to me and turned on the TV, switching to an advertisement for excursions the next day in the port. I stayed sitting and reading the book I started by the pool. After a long, awkward silence, she sighed and announced that she was going to bed. When I didn't get up right away to go with her, she took on a more determined tone. "Are you going to bed?" she said. Her voice did not sound sexy or even attractive. I already knew this tone, trying to make my poor husband confused with the desire to go crazy in bed. Rose was no worse than other women who didn't want their carefully laid plans to fall apart. The problem was that I couldn't understand what the plans were. "No," I said, without looking up from the book. "I got so carried away by reading that I want to continue. Good night, I love you." She sighed exaggeratedly, lightly kissed the top of my head, and said, "Good night, I love you too." It was a hard night for me. I didn't want to ruin the only opportunity of vacation that was supposed to give us both wonderful memories. If I had been honest with myself, things might have turned out the way Rose said they would. She had a relationship with Gerald, whether I liked it or not. She spent as much time with him, if not more, than she did with me, week after week, and even more if you count business trips. Then a terrible thought came over me. She really was with him. Karen, 6 hours on a roller coaster. Damn, I thought. Maybe he's not just a runaway who's seeing a new woman every week. Rose could be this woman. Bastard, right under my nose. As soon as the thought arose, I quickly pushed it away. This must be ridiculous. I needed to make a point. In my mind, I allowed things to get so bad that I started to ignore the obvious. This was inevitable within the monotonous routine of everyday life. But I decided that this would all end, and if this vacation was a catalyst for change, so be it. I woke up to daylight and a distant noise like the sound of a trapeze being pulled out. The sliding door on our private deck was open, allowing a warm breeze to flow into the room. My tablet showed that it was already after 9 in the morning. I looked around our room and, as expected, Rose was gone. She was probably at the meeting, but I didn't know for sure. Even before going to bed, I decided not to let her and Gerald ruin my vacation, so I took a shower and headed to the buffet, thinking about breakfast. An hour and a half later, with a full stomach, I returned to our room. There was no sign of Rose or any sign of her presence. It's time for mini golf. On my way to the upper deck, I met the woman I had seen at the pool the day before. Apparently, I made a good impression on her because she looked at me intently without being embarrassed. After being befriended by another lone passenger, an older man probably in his 60s, I had a pretty good experience as I continued to sort out my issues with Rose. I didn't plan on avoiding her for the entire vacation. I didn't avoid her at that moment. But she disappeared again, as if she had disappeared into thin air. I headed to the business center. I wasn't going to let Rose or Gerald play that damn, big, scary ship game by running around in circles. In any case, I didn't believe in it. There were several people in the center. I described Gerald and Rose and asked if anyone had seen them. Nobody saw. Then I approached the concierge and asked if there were meeting rooms. He explained where they were, but said they would all be booked by the companies booking the group cruise rate. The two would not be able to use them, he said, no matter how much money they were offered. I returned to our room. This time I found a note from my wife. "My dear, I'm sorry that our paths didn't cross again. Unfortunately, I can't look for you today because our meeting didn't go well. Gerald and I have things to do. I'm very sorry, and I will do everything I can to make things right. Gerald is also upset and promised that neither work nor himself will disturb us until the end of our vacation. In fact, he will likely jump ship in the coming days and return to the States to resolve the situation with his client. I will meet you here no later than 2:30 p.m., my love. Then we'll have all the time to reconnect and enjoy the cruise. We'll be in Portugal tomorrow, and I can't wait to spend the day on the beach with you." Please try not to be angry with me. I can't change my job, but I understand how it affects you. If you let me, I promise that everything will change from now on. With love, Rose. It was almost 11:30 in the morning. I was angrier than I had ever been with my wife, but at the same time calm and determined. I left my note. Expensive. Forgive me too. I decided to enjoy my vacation. I worked hard and deserve it. I paid a fair amount for it, no matter how much your boss threw at me. I won't be able to meet you at 2:30 because I have other plans. It's up to you to decide whether you wait for me or find something or someone to entertain you. I guess I'll see you tonight. If you wait, then we can talk seriously about how the rest of our anniversary vacation will go. If not, oh well, I am quite capable of planning everything myself. With love. I In my mind, everything had already changed dramatically in our marriage, and the result of my next actions would determine the outcome of everything. Thoughts of paranoia were already creeping into my brain, images of the two of them together on business trips, deliberate or perhaps careless, plans to deceive me. The thought that this cruise could even be the vehicle for their revelation party, that she would leave me for this super-rich bastard who can spend his money however he wants. But they won't get their pleasure that way. If Rose didn't change her tone and actions in the next few hours, he could have her. I was so angry. This thought plunged me into a new, dark abyss. They'll both pay. I could not harm this scoundrel financially because he could compensate for any damages that I could cause in a month or even in a day. But he will pay, and I will definitely figure out how to do it. Without any doubt, I will no longer be there when she returns, if she decides to return at all. I gathered most of my things and quickly packed the smallest suitcase we had brought with us. I didn't want to look like a failure carrying it around the ship, so I decided to leave it and come back for it in the morning when I was sure she was gone. Then I'll jump ship and book a flight home from Portugal. I headed to the bar adjacent to the casino entrance and ordered my favorite cocktail. Sitting there, I watched happy people, happy couples, and I felt sick. After a while, I got bored. Angry and bored. I used to lose $100 playing 60-cent slot machines. Now it didn't matter anymore. I ordered a fresh drink, sat down at the same Buffalo slot machine that Rose had played on 2 days ago, lit one of the last 2 cigars, deposited $2,000, and began to press the maximum bet. I had about 400 left when I got 4 coins. The free games kept pouring in, and I ended up hitting 14 of the 15 bull symbols. This netted me a healthy $7,850, which would certainly help me pay for my hotel room and plane tickets. Maybe it was my lucky day, I thought mockingly. Then I realized it was 5 minutes after midnight, so maybe I shouldn't be so excited. I suddenly felt tired. Heading to my favorite deck pool, I found only a few people there. At the counter where towels were distributed during the day, blankets were given out for those who liked to watch the stars. I took 2 and curled up on the sun lounger where sleep finally carried me away. So I woke up the next morning a little disoriented. Several passengers were getting ready for the morning swim, and the crew was quickly getting everything in order for the start of a new day. How Rose could do this to us was completely incomprehensible to me. In my confusion, all I could think was that this had probably been going on for a while, and maybe it was their way of getting it out in the open. Why not immediately say that she is leaving me for a rich boss who could treat her like a queen, which I could only dream of? To me, it would be more respectful and allow me to justify my anger when it subsides. Why bother with this? Why have sex with me on the first night? Maybe it was a kind of goodbye. I had no answers, just a lot of questions. I didn't drink much, but my head still hurt. And suddenly my thought was interrupted when someone's shadow passed to my right. "Well, you don't look bad," she said in a woman's voice. I turned towards the rising sun to see who it was. "Oh my God," came a mocking laugh. "I guess you still have problems with your wife." She tried to make fun of my situation. It was Gwen. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, there she was, Gwen, and that's when I realized the ship really is small. She could easily understand that her presence here was unwelcome. Sitting down on the lounge chair next to me, she suggested, "Can you sit with me?" She took off her sarong and lay down, revealing an expensive, barely visible swimsuit. It was clear that she did not ask permission. She began, speaking at the same time as me. "Before we go any further, I think we both need a drink. How do you Americans have hair of the dog?" she added, waving calmly and defiantly to a crew member who was working at a nearby bar. He immediately came up. "I want a mojito with your best rum with extra mint," she ordered, "and a Bloody Mary for my friend." The man nodded and began to act as she continued, "And please don't forget to add avocado toast." She turned to me as the bartender left. "We'll get you cleaned up quickly," she said. I wanted to tell her to leave, that I wanted to be alone, but as if subconsciously, my mind was saying, "Don't be stupid. She's the only person on this ship, you know." I took a deep breath and tried to relax. Gwen was unattractive, and that was important, although her assertiveness frightened me. I had a question, no matter how stupid it seemed, and it was probably dictated by my disbelief at that moment. "Why are you here?" I asked. "Are you following me?" I guess I didn't have a chance to say this yesterday. She immediately turned to me. "I have some extrasensory perception, and after meeting you at the promenade, I couldn't stop thinking about you. This morning I woke up from a dream and felt that you might be in danger." "In danger," I repeated, thinking she was joking. Sometimes she reached out to touch my arm. Premonitions do not come true, or, more precisely, do not coincide with what is happening or about to happen. I felt that you needed my help. You could say that was my general impression. "Wow," I said. "This is crazy and weird. How long have you been able to do this?" "All my life," she answered sincerely. "That's why I don't believe that any meeting is a coincidence, and that's why I knew I had to meet you." Before I could say anything, the waitress approached us with our drinks and toast. I was amazed at the speed and efficiency. I probably wouldn't have been able to find the toilet that quickly. "This looks delicious, honey," Gwen said, handing me the drink. "Toast for him. Please put this on my account in the room. Gwendalyn Huitt, Star Suite. Oh, and honey, add a $50 tip to the bill." I had seen an advertisement for Star Suite before this trip. It was a room just below the command bridge at the top of the ship. The cost per night was $3,000. Gwen turned to me as I just stared at her. "Is there something on your face?" she asked, trying to diffuse the situation, although not very successfully. Over breakfast, Gwen told me her story, and what a story it was. Her parents were killed while on safari in Zimbabwe when she was 11. When I asked if it was an accident, she said killed was a more accurate word. Gwen's parents were extremely wealthy, and she and her twin received a huge inheritance share that was placed in a trust. They spent the next 7 years with their aunt in the USA. "So these days," Gwen concluded, "I'm often called a jet setter. I spent my 20s working with high-powered investors, so at 36, I'm proud to say that it would be difficult for me to spend all my savings." "What about your twin?" I asked. "What does he do now?" "Oh, he's everywhere," she replied with a playful note. "His fortune pales in comparison to mine, but he, too, managed to achieve success. Now let's talk about your problem, shall we?" Gwen was determined to find out everything about Rose's boss from the very beginning. At first, I was hesitant to tell the whole story, ashamed of what had happened over the past few days. Saying it out loud only made things worse and made me question how I could have trusted her so much in the first place. In the end, Gwen got it all out of me. Based on intuition, she asked, "Without any concrete evidence, would you say they had sex before this cruise?" It was a cruel question, costing $64,000. Was I so in love that I missed something important? "No," I answered after a long pause. "I can't believe it. That doesn't mean I could be wrong, I just can't." "Okay," she nodded, accepting my answer. "So what do you think is going on?" "I don't know either." I rubbed my head with my hands. This behavior is alien to me and what I knew about my wife. Obviously, she made it clear that she was indebted to him in some way for organizing this trip. Going to his room for sex, admitting it, and being so cruel about telling me about it is not the Rose I know. On the other hand, I continued, everything looks too convenient. The fact that Gerald's girlfriend didn't show up, that he was always nearby, this was an inappropriate business visit. Damn it, even you showed up. I fell silent without finishing my thought. She was kind to me, and there was no reason to drag her into the fictitious plot that my mind was hatching. You have to admit that the situation is strange, she suggested, ignoring my comment. If he has some control over her, perhaps. She thought for a moment. If the goal was to make you jealous, and then use your jealousy against you, what are you going to do? Another million-dollar question. I don't know, I admitted. I just want to get off this ship. I want to go home. To, I hope, sort everything out so that I never see her or him again. That seems pretty harsh, she offered. If you don't believe she cheated on you before last night, then at least there should be a conversation about what happened. If not in order to find answers to your questions, then at least out of respect for each other, despite her disrespect. Yes, I replied. I guess you're right. But the thing is, I don't want to hear any of her explanations right now. I'm not even sure I can face her without choking her. Gwen raised an eyebrow. We'll be docking in Lycos soon, she said. I have a villa 8 kilometers from the city of Porto. Since you have, 11 or 12 days of vacation left, why not rest? I would honestly like your company so you can clear up your thoughts. I started to get a bad feeling, although I couldn't quite figure out why. You have a villa here in Portugal, I asked, and you're on a cruise ship that spends most of your days in Portuguese waters. Why do you need this? Gwen's smile faded for a moment. I already explained. I'm rich and I have nothing else to do. Sometimes I just go on a boat to enjoy sailing for the sake of a man, and sometimes I meet interesting people, men and women. This would be one of those times. I live in a villa, which in the US would be considered a castle, and I live there alone, apart from the hired staff. I've invited dozens of interesting people to dinner over the years. If you were me, you would understand what it's like to have a dinner guest. Did they all survive? I laughed, trying to show that I was joking, although there was real curiosity inside me. Cade, she said pleadingly, I understand your skepticism, especially after what your wife did. Nobody is forcing you, I suggest. If it turns out that you suit me, I will even think about paying for your plane ticket home. And before you ask, I've already answered this question twice. For me, a plane ticket to anywhere in the world is like throwing a coin into a magic well. I sat appraising her. What are the chances that I would meet someone like her in such a strange and, frankly, kidnapping environment? What do you have to lose? She sighed with visible relief. I have servants, exotic food that you definitely don't want to spend money on, alcohol and other, shall we say, mind-altering substances, and a view of a hill that overlooks the city and the sunset over the Atlantic. When she said it like that, in exchange, I began, do you just want company, or is there more to it? Cade, she said, I'd be lying if I said I didn't find you attractive. If intimacy develops between us, I won't mind. But at the same time, I understand that your head is not in the right place for this right now. Let's leave this question open as an option, just for now. Reluctantly, I agreed to join Gwendolyn in her venture. I didn't understand why I doubted it. She was strikingly beautiful, older than me and clearly wiser. Being with her, in any sense, could be a learning experience. Where are your things? She asked. I almost forgot about them. Packed up in my room. I sense that you don't want to meet your wife, she remarked. Do you want me to take your things? I can pretend I work for an accountant. I said that was a good idea and handed her my key card and cabin number. Gwen asked me to wait at the ramp. As she walked past the pool, she took out her phone and touched the screen. I assumed she was calling one of her people to pick us up. Many passengers disembarked. I didn't want to accidentally run into Rose or her lover, so I sat about 15 meters from the line that had formed outside the small cafe and watched Gwen. "There you are," she said, approaching with my small bag. "You seem to be traveling light." "Were they there?" I asked. "No," she answered, carefully taking my hand. "No one was there, and judging by the look of the bed, no one was sleeping there either." We walked down the ramp, and I immediately felt better about leaving this floating prison. At the end of the fenced passage, we found ourselves in a taxi, and within 10 minutes, an expensive limousine arrived. "Do you want to explore the city, or is it better to go straight to the villa and see the sights later?" she suggested. I chose the second one, and we still saw a lot along the way. Gwen's home was located on hills dotted with vineyards as far as the eye could see. Gwen's description of her home did not convey its true splendor. It was a 12,000 square foot shadow with 10 bedrooms and 7 bathrooms. The pool was Olympic size, but there was also a smaller indoor pool. Behind the pool area were servants' quarters and 3 more bedrooms. I was given the choice of one of 2 rooms on the left at the top of the grand staircase. I chose the one that faced east so I could see the sunrise over the vineyards. As I was unpacking my things, Gwen peered through the doorway. "Dinner will be in 10 minutes." After lunch, Gwen asked if I was ready for a tour of the port. She turned out to be an excellent guide because she lived there herself. We visited several stores, and she tried to buy me everything from sunglasses to expensive suits. What I noticed most from the start was that she was trying to distract me from thinking about my soon-to-be ex-wife and this whole nasty situation. We went to her favorite wine store, where she asked me to select several bottles of both red and white wine. We had dinner on the veranda overlooking the pool, where the sun was slowly sinking below the horizon. It was disconcerting to realize that I had never tried roast lamb before, with the exception of baby back ribs. She laughed with me, but more importantly, she listened to me and learned my life story. She was particularly interested in my occupation. When I talked about my ambitions to create my own company, she gave me some useful advice that she had learned over the years of working in the financial industry. The only time she mentioned Rose was when she compared our life goals. Since she knew little about Rose's life, it seemed strange to me. She immediately noticed the expression on my face. What I meant was that, given her profession, she stammered, and what she did with her boss, I meant that I wasn't sure you were compatible. As a good listener, she realized already at dinner that Gwen didn't seem to care much about me. To be honest, I realized that, probably, for her I was just a guest, and maybe even a toy. After the sun disappeared behind the horizon and the cool evening arrived, Gwen suggested watching a movie together. I was used to watching TV on my own, but Gwen took me to a small movie theater that seats about 20-30 people. Yes, small. "Make yourself comfortable," she said seductively. "I'll have Giorgio come over and take your drink order. Do you want to snack on some pasta or popcorn?" While she was gone, my mind began to work correctly again. What am I doing here with this rich cougar? I bet she rarely gets told no. I have too many problems of my own. Divorce, property division. I wondered how much or to what extent Gerald would help her with her part of the divorce. Maybe, with some luck, he'll just take it, and I'll be left with most of the property. Gwen returned, wearing something that would be called fashion in Europe, but in the US would only be called underwear. She probably thought that my gaze was hypnotized by her beauty, when in fact I was amazed by her impudence. She held an expensive lighter and a silver cigarette case in her hands, and before she could settle down next to me, Giorgio served our drinks. "I heard that Americans love science fiction," she teased, "but I don't think that's enough to create the right mood, so I chose drama. I hope you like it." Gwen was beautiful, but without much depth, a shame, really. I tried to imagine myself in her place. Rich, not fully understanding what it means to be rich, left without parents at age 11 and raised with relatives for whom life was routine, served from the outside from the very beginning of adult life. She was the epitome of spoiled. It's not surprising that she flirtatiously approached me. In my world, such behavior would be described as attacking when trying to charm someone. I remained polite, but my thoughts were elsewhere. Perhaps it was because I was in two different worlds by the end of the film that I was stunned by the kiss. Gwen looked offended as I slumped back in my chair, spilling the rest of the popcorn. I probably thought I looked like I had been surprised by a blow from a bat or a snake. I felt the need to fix everything. Sorry, I tried to sound sincere. It was unexpected. You caught me off guard. I knew I was stuttering, and I was ashamed of the way I acted, especially considering all the generosity you showed me. I'm sorry I scared you, Gwen said with grace. Perhaps I was. How should I put it in a hurry? It's okay, I tried to smooth the situation over. My thoughts were somewhere else. I don't think I'm ready for this. I'm busy trying to plan my life. I'm sorry that I offended you, because you were only kind, calming, and a wonderful listener to me. Gwen thought, and there was silence until the credits of the film ended. She started several times, then stopped, and finally said, I invited you here, she admitted slowly, so that you could at least enjoy the rest of your vacation. I'm the one who should apologize to you, Cade. I'm sorry. I'm broken, Gwen, I said. I'm not one of those who likes to wallow in self-pity. She broke our vows. She also stuck it in my face. I can't say they because Gerald was nowhere to be seen. Cade, she hinted, I think I admire the way you separate feelings from logic and start solving problems, but at this point, you don't even know why she left you in the room. We think she went to him for sex, but you don't know for sure. In my opinion, I replied, it's even worse if she didn't do it. If this was some kind of twisted joke or game, then it's terrible. Listen, forgive me, I reached for her hand. You try so hard to be kind, but I ruin everything. In my defense, I'm not at my best right now. Gwen chuckled, diffusing the awkward situation, and we both laughed. So should I leave it? She said, picking up a decorative cigarette case. I nodded. If you don't mind, I said seriously, I'll take it next time. I need to sleep. Gwen didn't let go of my hand when I tried to pull her away. Cade, please listen to me, she said, meeting my gaze with her intensity. I did the wrong thing. You don't have to apologize or feel like you did anything wrong. Although I have a lot of money, I have few interpersonal skills. I foolishly thought that I could seduce you with something that usually helps me forget about my problems, adding a little mind-altering substance, and then maybe seduce you so that you forget about your troubles. Like I said, I was stupid and overconfident. Well, I replied thoughtfully, neither of us have to apologize. Let's finish for today and try to sleep. I'm sticking with the mindset of, tomorrow is a new and better day, so I won't let that backstabbing bitch get me down, and you won't get too far ahead of yourself. Agreed? Her smile was worthy of her bank account. She kissed me softly on the cheek and left me alone. It was difficult to sleep. Despite what I told Rose, I couldn't get her out of my head. More precisely, I could not get rid of thoughts about how I was completely unaware of what was happening. The more I reflected on the past year, the brighter the signs became. They had always been friends, and the fact that she became his personal assistant only brought them even closer. I lay there and wondered if they even had separate rooms for their business meetings. But this did not answer the main question. Why didn't she just tell me about it and ask for a divorce? What was the point of this cruise? This damn guy could buy 12 small countries, so why all this farce about our marriage? What did I do that she could cause me such pain and humiliation? If they had been close for the past year, did the cruise push them to make a decision that they were trying to hide from me, or perhaps from each other? Maybe Gerald didn't have a girlfriend who would cancel at the last minute. Maybe he didn't have a single girlfriend at all. The thought made me shudder with anticipation of the cruelty they might be planning. I fell asleep full of determination. They would pay, and even if I couldn't come up with something big in the short term, as a planner, I knew how to play the long game. Gerald, with all his wealth, probably felt quite smug and definitely thought he was one step ahead. I'll teach his arrogance a lesson. There was one more thing that bothered me. Gwen. Her timing, the way we met, and the invitation here were all too convenient for me. I will also make a plan for this. I stayed up, using my tablet to scrutinize Gerald and his company, looking for weaknesses and inconsistencies. Information about Gwen was harder to find. There was a knock on the door, and when I opened it, a shy young woman announced that breakfast was ready. Gwen looked incredible in her semi-conservative two-piece swimsuit and another expensive sundress. It's true that the right clothes can make a person look amazing. After asking how I slept, she announced her plans for the day. "How many more vacation days do you have, Cade?" After doing the math in my head, I told her I had 8 more days. "Great," she said, clearly too enthusiastic. "I want to take you to the yacht. My crew is already preparing to set sail." "I don't know, Gwen," I stuttered. "I'm not sure I'm ready for this. I need to start separating my life from Rose, and while you're wonderful, I don't think I'd be good company." "Nonsense," she did not lose heart. "I want you to enjoy the time you have left, whatever that looks like. There is no need to do anything drastic while you are still angry and worried." She walked over to my side of the table, which was quite a long walk, and sat down next to me. "Cade, look at me," she said, piercing me with her gaze. "I'd be lying if I said I didn't like you, but honestly, if you're in too much pain, we'll just enjoy each other's company. I won't insist, but it's better than sitting here in this empty villa." I wondered how she managed to act like this when she wasn't receiving guests. I wanted to retreat, to reject her advances, but in the end I gave in. The idea of going sailing had always fascinated me, and I realized that this might be my only opportunity. I did not forget that I would be alone, with the exception of a small crew on the ship with the beauty. After I agreed, Gwen left the room, making a phone call that I suspected was to alert her team. I got up and gathered a few things that I thought I would need for this trip. By 10 o'clock in the morning, we were already boarding the Pomba Branca, a 90-foot vessel with all the amenities. Gwen said the name means white dove because she saw one in a nearby tree during her parents' funeral. I was introduced to Captain Code, a tall, slender, and muscular black man who seemed polite but aloof. Damn it, I couldn't pronounce his first mate's name correctly. He was also dark-skinned, but shorter and plumper compared to Kodu. Gwen enthusiastically showed me around her ship. Before we went below deck, I noticed that she was frivolous, if not rude, towards the captain when giving him orders. The ship was exciting. All rigging was automated. There was a full kitchen next to an open dining area. There was even a helicopter maiden on top. 3 cabins forward and 3 aft, all state-of-the-art, with each end of the ship having its own cabin with a private bathroom. Gwen kindly offered me a cabin in the back, which I found odd since I probably only needed to change. Leaving the harbor, Gwen ordered the captain to hold position and the mate to launch the jet skis. We spent the better part of an hour riding along the breakwater, safe from the Atlantic waves. Gwen was as athletic as she was gorgeous. She handled the jet ski much better than me, although she probably had enough time to become an expert. She flew past my jet ski several times, almost as if she was playing a game of strength. Back on board, the mate served us a shrimp salad, accompanied by a French Chardonnay. I forgot about my problems for a while and enjoyed Gwen's company and hospitality. Then she surprised me by telling me that she had some urgent business to attend to, and that she would meet me on deck in an hour or so. I wanted to continue making my plans, but after a few minutes of looking at the tablet, my eyes began to close. In a dream where I was light and pumped up, I had a terrible dream. Rose and Gerald stood on a makeshift stage on the cruise ship boardwalk, pointing at me and laughing at me. Many other passengers gathered and also mocked me for something I, in particular, did not know. The thing is, in my mind, I actually knew. "Wake up, sleepyhead," a soft voice rang out, and I felt a gentle hand lay on my shoulder. "We are sailing with a tailwind. Walk with me and Code. We'll show you how to operate the helm." After regaining my senses, I followed Gwen. To say that the next 2 hours were a highlight for me would be an understatement. Gwen stayed by her side while Captain Code showed me how to control the sails, how to adjust them to move upwind or downwind. Despite the automation of the ship, and the fact that I was not involved in physical control, as sailors of old did, it gave me a delight that I will remember fondly. The wind died down and Code regained control. Gwen linked my hand with hers and led me to the bow, where we watched the ocean rock and toss us. Looking around, I didn't notice any land in any direction. Gwen seemed to understand my dilemma. "We're in the open ocean," she said calmly. "I told the captain that we would remain at sea for a few days. I felt that you liked it. Just let it go, Cade. Let it all go and enjoy." Maybe she was right. She seemed to understand what I was going through. Why not? I had no other place to go, at least not right away. Dinner consisted of a surf and turf dish, one hell of a huge lobster tail and a veal tenderloin chateaubriand. Gwen selected Perrier Jouet Belle Brut champagne from her personal supply to complement the meal. I guess it was a little old-fashioned because we had baked Alaska for dessert. We watched the sunset on the starboard side. We laughed and joked, and Gwen tried her best not to mention the looming elephant in the room. I could have been in a much worse place at that moment, not least my cabin on a cruise ship. She continued the conversation when I was distracted, talking about her work, or, as she called it, her hobbies, as well as some of her travels and adventures. In the end, we ended up in the same lounge chair. My hand was on her shoulder, and she was pressed against my chest. During a short pause, while we were both admiring the sky, she leaned over to kiss me. Of course, the champagne eased my inhibitions, and I kissed her back. There was definitely a spark between us, and she was a great kisser, but my thoughts immediately went to Rose, and the mood instantly evaporated. "Don't think," she said quietly. "Stay with me in the present moment." The feelings that were bubbling inside me were not overwhelming, but this damn internal conflict still haunted me, despite my attempts to ignore it. I told myself that I deserved what she was offering. At least I convinced myself that I understood exactly what awaited me when I decided to agree. But still I had a plan. Something seems fishy here, and it wasn't the ocean. My indecisiveness made Gwen become more courageous. I found it difficult to concentrate, no matter how hard I tried. How strange our consciousness is. While I was thinking, "What's wrong with me?" I already knew the answer. It was all just buried deep. As much as I hated Rose and what she did to me, I still couldn't tear myself away from her completely. I knew this day would come, but not today. A small part of me conquered the big problem, whispering a reminder, "Don't be like her." Gwen stopped and looked at me. There was both surprise and disappointment in her gaze. I understood perfectly well. "What's wrong?" I asked. The pain in her voice indicated that she was not ready to hear my answer, but silence would have caused even more pain. "Nothing happened," I sighed in disappointment. "At least there's nothing wrong with you. I just can't get her out of my head, you know. I like what you do, and I would like to have fun with it too. I really would like to." Gwen's disappointment turned to anger. It shocked me a little. It wasn't that she was angry, but rather how quickly her emotions changed. "I never," she said, getting up and leaving indignantly. I felt sorry for her, but at the same time I felt satisfaction for myself. Heading to my cabin, I went into the kitchen to grab a couple of snacks and bottled water. I had a job. I spent about half an hour trying to find out everything I could about Gerald using the tablet. It was painful. He was born into wealth and started his own company right out of college. By all accounts, he was an ordinary spoiled guy. No arrests, no rumors about the company, and no personal gossip. A small knock on the door made me jump. I turned off the tablet and turned it over on the nightstand. "Cade," she asked quietly, "can I come in?" "Yes," I replied. She walked in carefully and looked me straight in the eyes. "I just need to ask," she began. "What's wrong with me?" She didn't wait for my answer. "Maybe I'm naive or socially. Whatever. I don't know how to cope with rejection. Maybe as the Americans call it. The very word they use for the ultimate measure. Oh yeah, narcissist. This is difficult for me. I'm clearly attracted to you. I thought you felt the same. I did everything I could to open up to you, partly to ease your pain, but not only that." She poured everything out, and I wanted to choose my words carefully so as not to aggravate her fragile ego. I motioned for her to sit on the bed next to me. Of course, she thought it was an invitation for a hug, but noticing my gaze, she sat down, leaving some distance between us. "It's not like that," I tried to convince her. "Over the past few days, you have managed to recognize me. You know what she did to me, her, and her nasty boss, and I can't stop thinking about it. I'm not good at all this therapeutic stuff. I don't know the stages of grief. What she did was so out of character, or so I thought. I also have to start separating our lives to protect myself financially. I have money, but not like you." Gwen perked up strangely at that last remark. She sat up straight and took my hand in hers. "Cade," she said, "I understand, but I think you're looking at it from the wrong angle. You said that she has been working closely with this guy for a long time, right?" I nodded. "So they really became close, and maybe it started even earlier. She is on a cruise. Maybe he puts pressure on her because he is lonely, and if he is rich like me, then he is convinced and strong. You're moving too fast. Slow down, Cade," she continued. "I want you. We can make sure that when you finally talk about what happened, you have something against her. If you stop and think about other options, you will realize that it may all come down to the overall experience on the high seas. There is no need to go straight to divorce. Don't you at least want to hear her side of the story and find out why it all happened this way?" "No, not really," I sighed in despair. "It doesn't matter, don't you understand? If she can do it once, she'll do it again if I forgive. No, she ruined everything for me even before she stood in front of me and said she would spend the night with him. I didn't do anything to deserve this. Moreover, I am angry with myself for not getting to know her better." "But you won't know how well you know her," she countered, "until you hear her version." Then she changed the subject. "Anyway, I want to make love to you. I want to ease your pain, and I swear to God I will do it tomorrow. I'll leave you alone tonight because I can only handle one rejection. Sleep well, Mr. Tomorrow you are mine." Gwen didn't even give me a chance to answer. She kissed the top of my head and walked out of my cabin, closing the door behind her. I returned to my tablet, convinced that the morning would bring a trial with Gwen. Against her advice, I went into our joint bank account to see what was there. I almost had a heart attack. The balance was almost exactly what I expected, plus the $1 million deposit I had made just a few hours earlier. I was completely confused. At first, I thought Gwen had somehow gained access to my banking information and was trying to buy. What sex? My affection. I clicked on the deposit. The funds came from a corporation I had not heard of, which raised even more questions. After filtering out company information online, I found a lot of unfamiliar names. None of this made sense. Then it dawned on me. Was Gerald paying my wife to sleep with him? She wasn't bad, but I didn't think she was worth $1 million. Maybe he was paying her to leave me. After all, that's exactly what she did. My analytical mind was screaming at me to isolate this money, no matter the reason. Plus, it was a joint account, so if he meant it for her, it shouldn't have been deposited into an account that belonged to both of us. Acting quickly, I opened a new savings account and transferred the money into it. That amount may require a hold of 2 or 3 days, maybe more, but at least the person who deposited it won't be able to reverse the transaction. I expected it would be at least 10 days before the money would be available and no one but me would be able to touch it. If the money was from Gwen, and I knew it first thing in the morning, then I would put it away from the clutches of my treacherous wife. At that moment, my brain was illuminated with the light of consciousness. I remembered my youth, that unexpected birthday, all the other incidents. I felt like Peter Pan, an adult who momentarily forgot how to fly. Then my determination took hold, and I began to make a plan. Someone will get it in full for trying to ruin my life. Just before turning off the lights, I opened the small porthole window to let in the fresh night air. As I listened, I heard a noise that sounded more like a quarrel. Male and female voices, although the female was much more expressive. It had to be Gwen and Code. The bitter venom of her words was barely a whisper as she repeatedly rebuked her captain. he was clearly violating one or more of her instructions. I slept better that night. It took me a long time to fall asleep, but it was quiet and dreamless. I woke up to the sound of seagulls and bright sunshine. The heated shower pleasantly enveloped me. I wondered how I could approach Gwen. Of course, she was beautiful, but strange. On the one hand, would it be so bad to sleep with a gorgeous woman who specifically came to my rescue? I answered to myself, but at the same time I felt anxiety. She probably wouldn't stop there. She would want something more, something that I hadn't thought of, and I needed to resist until I understood all the circumstances. On the other hand, I could be honest and decisive with her. The sex she offered was of no use to me. The feeling of detachment towards Rose and this whole situation was strange. Just a few days ago, when I felt love, I would have expected to feel something different. Maybe my subconscious had already alienated us from each other, or maybe it was some kind of defense mechanism. I was surprisingly indifferent to the idea of divorcing her. I stepped out of the shower, grabbing a towel. Some of my toiletries rang on the sink, and at the same time I heard what sounded like an airplane. Then I remembered about the small helipad on the upper deck of the ship. I quickly got dressed and brushed my teeth so I could go and see what was going on. Indeed, a helicopter landed on the ship. I saw Gwen and Captain Code sitting at one of the tables near the bow. She waved her hand and motioned for me to come over. "Who is this?" I asked, coming closer. Over the noise of the rotors, Gwen looked at me questioningly, and I pointed to the upper deck. Gwen pulled out a chair, and when the ship changed direction due to the wind mixed with the flow from the rotors, her expensive hat flew off and fell into the ocean. As soon as the engine stopped, the wind and noise also died down. Gwen motioned for me to take a seat next to her. I wanted to see who was coming on board, so I did not immediately follow her instructions. "Cade," Gwen called out to me loudly. "Sit down." I didn't like the tone, but I sat down as she suggested. The man walking down the steep stairs looked familiar, but the woman walking behind him made me dizzy. I looked at Gwen, who was studying my face. "What the hell are they doing here?" I blurted out. "Calm down, Cade," she ordered. "I'll explain everything soon." Captain Code moved closer to Gwen, standing between us. It was at that moment that I perceived him as an opponent and appreciated his build. He was a few inches taller than me, but not heavier. At first glance, the fight could have been equal, and I might have won. I tried to find the first mate and saw him behind me on the left. He was stocky, short, but muscular. He was the bigger threat, and both together would have significantly reduced my chances. Gerald helped Rose down the steep stairs. He did not let go of her hand as soon as she stepped onto the deck, and wore a satisfied smile, but not a mockery. He let go of her hand about halfway down the deck as they approached us. He sat her down, pulling out a chair opposite me, and then moved the only available chair away from me and closer to her. I looked at them with hatred. There was a rage bubbling inside me, a feeling of loss of control that scared me. Rose gave a confused look, but seemed to regain her resolve in just a few seconds. "Okay, Cade," Gwen began, as if about to read a lesson at school. "Let's get to know each other first, okay?" I still looked at the couple with disgust. Gwen snapped her fingers at me. I turned around slowly. "Gwen, I don't know what's going on here, but you better think twice before you snap your fingers like you're a dog. I'll rip your damn arm off," I growled. The captain took another step forward. I looked at him with a sneer. "Be careful, Captain," I warned in a flat, controlled tone. "To underestimate me is to make a fatal mistake." Gerald laughed out loud. "Ooh-oh," he exclaimed mockingly. "Beware, computer nerd." "Shut up, Gerald." It seemed that Gwen had already gained patience and wanted to return the show to normal. She turned and addressed me directly with her chair. "Let's dot the I's, okay?" she said. "This is my brother, Gerald, my twin brother." I didn't know if it was part of her game, perhaps she liked it, or if she was just giving me time to respond. When I remained silent, she continued without hesitation. "Now try not to lose your composure," she said dismissively. "I organized this whole chain of events. Yes, everything that has happened since you boarded this cruise was my plan. I've been planning this all together with these two for a while now, learning about you. She paused again, looking at me intently, as if daring me to speak. So, I said, turning to my future ex-wife, so, are you a call woman then? Rose wasn't usually quiet, especially under pressure. Either she was trained to be silent, or there was no stress because she was where she wanted to be. In the second case, it completely emphasized the hopelessness of the situation, and this was extremely alarming for me. Not at all, Gwen sighed. I am, however, a very selfish person. Desperate and selfish. You see, I told Gerald about my desperation more than once. Then one day he told me about his faithful personal assistant, Rose. I need your DNA, Cade, she said bluntly, and I'm ready to pay for it. I couldn't believe my ears. What are you up to? I asked sarcastically. Do you want to populate Mars with people? Create an army of clones on Earth? Shooting a funny video for TikTok? I had a hunch about where the money came from, but I wasn't going to let on that I already knew something. Funny, Cade, she continued deadpan. I need a child. I want him to be yours, but I don't want you to be his father. Moreover, you will never be able to have any contact with him. Okay, I said defiantly. Draw a contract, give me a syringe and 15 minutes, and voila. I don't. I started, but she interrupted me. Let Gerald throw Rose overboard. This will save me a lot of time, money, and grief. Besides, it definitely won't give her the opportunity to profit from the money you pay me. It doesn't work like that, Cade, she said quickly and decisively. You will remain married to her. That's right, you'll have sex with her and watch your grandchildren until you grow old. This is a love story, not a tragedy. Sounds like a tragedy to me, I growled. Let me be clear, I continued. Instead of contacting me, making me a cash offer, letting Gerald convince me that he's right, or letting Rose win me over with tears and sex, you instead kidnap me, give my wife to this sick freak, ruin my marriage and my life, all for what? Is this your grand plan? You could go to law enforcement, she said, as if that was the first option. If you didn't agree or felt pressured, I couldn't risk it. Gerald and I keep our fortunes separate, which is why our last names are different. I have interests that would not like my name to be associated with anything public. This is Gerald's world. Everything must remain in the shadows. Okay, I said, so what about these two? We thought, her tone changed slightly, that it would be fair for Rose if I asked her to father someone else's child. They became close by working together, and I thought it would be better for the whole family. I realized that I had found a discrepancy, a crack in the armor. I caught Rose's nervous wink in the corner of her gaze as Gwen said this. So, I asked, Rose makes me jealous for a few days, drives me crazy, and then what? She spends the night with this creep, and you come to make things right. We make love, and you have a bun in the oven. And then what? Simple. Her voice sounded as if I should have automatically understood the outcome. Gwen was mad, and I realized more and more how dangerous the situation was. We're having sex, she continued. Lots of sex almost the entire time you're on vacation. Then, a few days before you go home, Rose and Gerald come to the villa. We reunite you with Rose and explain what happened. You are paid generously for your contribution, $1 million, by the way. You and Rose spend the last days of your anniversary vacation reconnecting and begin making plans for the future. At the same time, neither you nor her are put under pressure by any puritanical American Victorian ideals. Besides, you will become rich. Well, I said, shrugging, that's where we end up. How's your plan going? To be honest, she admitted with a hint of fatigue, it's not going very well. The information I received about you from them was far from the truth. I never thought that a man your age, married for only 5 years, could love his wife so much. I realized that I was mistaken as soon as I saw you in that pool, broken to the point of impossibility. And yet, I blurted out contemptuously, you went ahead with the plan to have Rose leave me for him. I had to, Gwen said calmly, Her conversation with me seemed surreal. First of all, I promised them. She paused again, thinking. Secondly, I decided that this was the best way to get you off this ship so I could continue my seduction campaign. I would never have believed that you would dare to reject me. It hurt me. She still couldn't fully understand. Let me finish for you, I said with malicious coldness. I'm getting bored. So thirdly, she didn't leave me for him, right? You failed this, I deadpanned, crossing my arms. I want this ship to be turned around. This bastard can leave Rose. I don't need her anymore. No, she said quickly and decisively. I already paid you. Even if I don't get pregnant, I will demand a sample, and we need to settle the accounts between you and your wife. She was still looking at Code, who was standing behind me. And for my part, she added boastfully, this was a one-time event to equalize everything. As Gwen spoke these words, I watched Rose, and she met my gaze. Now it was clear excitement was visible in her eyes, and she turned to starboard. Gwen continued talking, although no one seemed to be listening, and when she noticed that I was looking at Rose, she realized it. Please God, she muttered to herself, and then turned to me again. Okay, she raised her head as if entering a new round of negotiations. It looks like we've both been misled, Cade, but that doesn't change anything. We have a deal $1 million. You can leave your bitch, bring her back, or I can arrange something more. Let's say, final and satisfactory, if that's more convenient for you. I laughed evilly. You don't understand anything, I said. You are not my mistress. If you need something, then negotiate first, like everyone else, you spoiled little thing. So negotiate, she said pleadingly. I'm listening. 5 million, I said with confidence. And these two will be sent on a long voyage before we turn this yacht towards Porto. 2 million, she paused, and they will be punished. I'm not a killer. Okay, I started to stand up. Then you will get your precious liquid through a syringe and not directly from the source. Give me the instrument. I'm afraid not, she said, also standing up and waving her hand. The captain and his assistant immediately approached me. The negotiations are over. You have an hour, no more, to agree to my proposal. After that, we'll do it our way. As you can see, there are no negotiations. If you agree, you will receive your reward. If not, you can join your unfaithful wife on this voyage to the death. My thoughts rushed feverishly. So, she's still a killer. I looked the captain straight in the eye. Are you two going to help her? I asked, so that it was clear. It won't be easy for me. Are you planning to hold me hostage for her plans or throw me overboard? He nodded without hesitation. At least now I knew where we stood. I turned to Gwen. You are a sick, disgusting woman, I laughed contemptuously. It looks like you achieved your goal. I will need that hour. Of course, she nodded slightly with a satisfied smile, and the sailors walked away. Although I am sick, I am not soulless. I want you to be completely honest with me. There will be more chances for success. Gwen turned her gaze to the remaining couple. What amazed and destroyed me at the same time was that Rose didn't even say a word the entire time. As the Blue Oyster Cult song says, she became just like them. Gwen grabbed my phone from the table and turned to Gerald and Rose. You two go to the bow, furthest to the bow, she ordered. I don't want Cade to see you. Damn it, I don't even want to look at you. You both just made things more difficult with your greed and lust. She turned to her future ex-wife. You disappoint me, darling. I thought that when you said how much you loved your husband, you were sincere. I might just destroy you for the lies you told me, so go to your cabin, or maybe I'll change my mind. Satisfied, Gwen looked at me again. Despite Gerald's presence and position, she was clearly the boss in this relationship. Go, she ordered. You have an hour to mentally prepare yourself, and then I expect you to make me fly to the skies. Then there was an ominous pause. Otherwise, I will rock your world, and this will not be for the better, I'm afraid. Captain Kodu led me to my cabin in silence. I decided to test his resolve and try to see what I could learn in case things went wrong. Are you really going to commit crimes for your boss? I asked him. He didn't answer or look at me. This was probably my weak question. I turned to him, walking back step by step along the narrow corridor. I don't think you can handle it, I said with a grin. In a fight with me. You don't look like you have enough muscle. Is she also limiting your food allowance? How's the dog? At least he looked at me like that, but without emotion. Yes, I think when the time comes, I will gladly beat you to death, I answered, although I wanted to say to death, but I did not want to make another unnecessary enemy. Perhaps I already started it. I turned to the direction I was going and said, Tell me, how much are you getting paid for this? I was sincerely interested. I wonder if I can get a little more. We were already at my cabin, and when I opened the door, I stopped without turning around. Think about it, Coda, I warned him sternly. It would be a pity to lose so much for that bitch. She doesn't know me, and neither do you. You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into. Without waiting for an answer, I stepped inside and slammed the door in his face in one smooth motion. I wasn't sure if I had succeeded in intimidating him at all. All I knew was that my tirade might cause him enough confusion to become insecure. If something breaks out between us, it could be a saving moment for me. I spent the remaining hour finalizing the plan I had made the night before. This time it wasn't about hurting anyone's feelings or teaching a moral lesson. This time my life depended on my ability to think ahead. When I turned on my tablet, it quickly reported that there was no internet connection, and this was quite expected. A little less than an hour later, there was a light knock on the door, and Gwen said, Come in, I said emotionlessly, lying on the bed in my swimming trunks. Gwen saw my indifferent attitude and sat down on the edge of the bed. I'm truly sorry, she began, for misinterpreting their intentions. It seems to me that you already understand that I was misled. She had nothing more to say, and I doubted that she truly felt regret. Blinded by your own ambitions and desires, right? I replied. The big lesson here seems to be that none of us knew the people we trusted. As for me, Rose would have been knocked down by now just for conspiring with you, not to mention sex with her boss. At least you had the brains to tell the truth. I am sure, she sighed, you have proven that you are a man of principle and, dare I say it, a truly honorable person. Not at all what Gerald and your wife described me as during the 2 months of preparing this plan. She paused briefly. I was clearly misled, she said with a hint of regret. For a moment I thought I had hope. I'm willing to compensate, she added hopefully, for his lies, if we can stick to the original deal. Exactly, I interrupted. There was and is no deal. I shrugged. You made a deal with them, foolishly hoping that I would agree. At the moment you are holding me against my will, trying to force me to give you a child. I don't trust you. I don't expect to ever see the money or any additional compensation for their deception. Right now, survival is more important to me than sex. They seem to be related as I understand it, so I'll do my best. But don't be upset if the little guy doesn't work. Gwen seemed shocked, as if I was making her look bad. She was just as delusional as her brother and that bitch. Are you going to keep me here until I get a positive urine test? I hoped, I seemed prepared for such a question, that we could enjoy our intimacy. This would increase the chances. No, I have no plans to keep you forever. At least they weren't there before. You should have gone home with your wife, fat and happy. I see that this is no longer happening, and I am very sorry. I promise you will get your money. If you give it your all, I will double the million and arrange your life, so that you can live easily and find a woman who truly cares about you. Heck, with or without a child, I will always remember you, and if you want to join me full-time, I'd be happy to have you. She wasn't just delusional, she was completely crazy. I decided that I would do everything in my power, hoping that she would keep her word and let me go before I got completely angry. But after listening to her words, I realized that she did not promise anything like that at all. Despite my plans, I didn't like my chances. The more I resisted, the more likely it was that they would just throw me overboard for all this trouble. I realized that all my plans were calculated for the moment when my feet would be on solid ground again. I was confident that this part would be completely in my favor. I remembered my nasty boss from long ago. That friend I brought into the equation inadvertently influenced events, which ultimately worked to my advantage. I met him a few months later at a party and asked him why he went so far. "I hated that bastard," he said, as if I should have known that. "I was always going to leave and was always looking for a way to beat him. You just gave me the opportunity I needed." I made my decision based on this. Looking around, I didn't find a single sheet of paper. There was a pen and a Sharpie marker in the bedside table drawer. The ink in the pen had long since dried, but the marker was in good condition. It wouldn't be of any use if I didn't find something to use it for. Finally, a strange insight dawned on me. When I lifted the mattress, I found a tag on it that no one was supposed to remove. I took it off and, carefully so as not to run out of space, scribbled the following. "Kudo, you know what they will do to you if they kill me, if I don't kill you first." On the back I wrote, "Get me off the ship and I will pay you." Hoped he would get the message. I wasn't even sure if he understood English, but I was out of options. The ship sailed along the coast, never moving more than a mile from the shore. I didn't think I could swim a mile, even without sharks. After I had thoroughly dried the inscription, I crushed it in my fist. Conveying the message promised to be difficult, especially if others, such as the first officer, were involved in restraining me. And the word transmission reminded me of something, so I took some baby powder and talc powder out of my toiletry bag, coated my tablet in it, and then put it in the bathroom sink. After closing the drain, I filled the sink with cold water. There was no way I wanted Gwen to be able to access my bank account. The powder would destroy the device's ability to function, and the water would serve as the vehicle. As I awaited my fate, my mind turned to Rose. Whether it was death or life, I had to sort out my thoughts and feelings towards her. She was a good wife, or so I thought. Maybe I was wrong, maybe even stupid, but I had a feeling that she had somehow fallen in love with Gerald and later with Gwen, albeit to a lesser extent. As absurd as it seemed, sitting in that cabin, my only regret was that she had not said a word to me on deck. Her face was impassive, devoid of emotion, almost as if she had never known me. And it hurt. I tried to convince myself that she had made this bed for herself. She deserved it. But I wasn't made of stone. I didn't deserve this, and she was a conspiracy. Voices from the deck brought me back to the present moment. I walked up to the open porthole and listened. Gwen was arguing with her brother. "Of course you have to," the woman said inaudibly in a muffled voice. "You took his wife away from him." This caught my attention, so I went into the bathroom, took a glass from the sink, stood on the couch, and pointed the glass to the ceiling. "I would soon take Rose for myself," he boasted. "She's been starting to fall in love with me for almost a year now. Besides, I've already contributed. You want a child so desperately." So Gwen didn't transfer the money as she claimed. Gerald probably used a fictitious company to make the payment. They were still arguing, but I didn't care what they said. What seemed like an eternity, in fact, was not. As expected, it was Kudo, his partner, and Gwen. I was surprised she didn't send Gerald to make it 3-against-1. My anxiety instantly increased when I saw the syringe in Kudo's hand. They didn't do things in half measures. They were going to introduce their substances. The dream was like a sexual nightmare. "Leave me alone, boy," I said to the caretaker or soldier. "I'm trying to watch it." "Wake up." I felt something cold and wet on my face. "Get up." What was Kodu doing in this theater, I thought. His face was tense. "We need to go now," he said. It sounded like an echo, even though he was close to me. His hand pulled me to my unsteady feet. "They drugged you with something. We don't have much time." I remembered, but it was he who mixed something in with me. "We need to get off this ship," he said, full of energy, even scared. Went. Looking out the window, I saw the first rays of dawn. It was still dark outside, but that would soon change. I also began to come to my senses, My mind and vision became clearer. "I need footage from the ship's security cameras," I said as we left the cabin. "No," he answered decisively. "The cameras have been off since we started our voyage." We headed to the stern of the yacht. Kodu placed a portable ladder at the stern and quickly ran over there quietly. I followed him and found a small boat with an outboard engine. The captain helped me on board since I was still under the influence. As soon as I was settled, he grabbed an oar and began to move us away from the ship. It took a while, and I was worried that we would be discovered, although I understood what Kodu was trying to do. The engine starting would be a clear sign. "The first mate is completely on their side," Kodu noted, almost as if talking to himself. "He's ready to kill for her." My thoughts were busy with my own worries. "Did she sleep with me?" I asked barely audibly. Kodu just nodded in agreement. We were about 200 yards away before he started the engine, turning us back towards Porto. When the ship became difficult to see with the naked eye, Kodu turned to me and looked into my eyes. "I'm going home," he said, "to Abidjan. From there, I may move my family to Lagos or another port city so they don't find me." "Why?" I asked, amazed that he was so afraid of Gwen. "Will she really send someone to the Ivory Coast for you?" "I blew up the ship," he admitted after a few seconds of thought. "I conspired with the oil pumps. This will cause a small explosion and disable the yacht, giving us time to escape. I also broke the radio." Out of habit, I immediately thought about my wife. This alarm only lasted 10 nanoseconds before I remembered the kind of person she had become. "Where are you going?" he asked, genuinely interested. "You know you can't go home, right? The authorities will find you and blame you if no one survives. If anyone survives, they will blame you and try to destroy you." Kodu was right, and I already knew it. "I'm going to visit my family in Scotland. It's better if you don't know the details. Can you help me get there?" He nodded slightly, as if understanding. "Yes, I know a sea captain in Porto who can help you start your journey. Do you have money?" I found this question strange, considering that I had already told him that he would be handsomely rewarded for his help. "Of course," I assured him. "When we get to Porto, all I need is a bank." "No," he said gloomily, somewhat disappointed. "We need to look like we're dead. This will be an act of kindness. Gwendolyn," he faltered with her name, "is very powerful and has a lot of money. We can't take risks." "Why did you help me?" I had to know. It wasn't because of my threats, I'm sure. Kodu just stared right through me for a moment. "I'm just a boatman," he said with humble determination. "Not a captain for a rich pig. She and her brother don't care about human life. I didn't want her to have a child, so I rigged the ship. Helping you is just a courtesy. I planned to take my small bag from Gwen's villa first, as I didn't want there to be any evidence of my presence there." Kodu warned that her staff had probably already removed it, wanting to erase all traces of my presence. He said that it was better to immediately go to a person he knew so that I could go about my business and he could go about his. And then I noticed dark smoke in the distance behind Kudo's shoulder and pointed at it. He looked very surprised and accelerated the boat to its maximum speed. I was introduced to Captain McConnell and went to England on his small cargo ship. From there, I called my Uncle Colin and asked if I could visit him, telling him not to tell anyone. His village was small, with a population of less than 2,000, and was an ideal place for me to hide. McConnell arranged for me to secretly move to another ship. I had to buy a new tablet and transfer $1 million to several offshore accounts, and then pay a new captain for passage. This, of course, was a risk, but the local newspaper reassured me. The article detailed the explosion and sinking of Gwen's yacht, and also stated that the ship's captain and the husband of one of the guests, Cade McDowell, were missing and presumed dead. I was shocked to see that Gwen was also dead. The only survivors were Rose and Gerald spun a tragic tale of romance and infidelity that ruined everything. Allegedly, I was in love with his sister, and by the time they realized this, I had already developed a plan to kidnap her and blow up the ship. By the time other ships arrived, Gerald was holding onto the wreckage of the ship, clutching my wife. I had to read the article 3 times. Everything seemed so surreal and incredible. Months later, I came to the conclusion that Gerald and Rose killed Gwen, or at least refused to help her, when the yacht exploded. Apparently, Kodu was too effective. I've often wondered if Gerald stayed with Rose, who was badly disfigured, or if he tossed her aside like trash. I never stopped looking over my shoulder, although I came to the conclusion that $1 million might not be that important to a man like him. My wife, Ainsley, and I have been together for 5 years, and we have a boy and a girl to complete our family. I work with local villages, including ours, to bring new technology to the area. My uncle and his wife were glad to see me, and soon after I told them my story, sworn to secrecy, they began to arrange dates for me. After all these years, thoughts of Rose rarely cross my mind. When they appear, I am glad that I had the ability to foresee and plan. Without this skill, my life could have been lost or extremely bleak. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think, click to the next one.